Well, hello. It's the next very basic Bible. Israel quick read from the time that Israel as a nation split into two until the time that Israel in the north went exiled. Only Israel in the south, which is called Judah, remained. Israel splits in two. You got Judah in the south, Israel in the north. Eventually, Israel is exiled. Now, later, of course, Judah is exiled too. Judah comes back. And later, they still use the name Israel sometimes. But for now, the nation in the north is called Israel and eventually gets exiled. So here we go. Right in the middle of right after a crazy story about some prophets, right after explanation of a king, now we're getting into some more war and politics. Here we go. King Mesha of Moab was a sheep breeder. Start. 2 Kings 3, chapter 3, verse 4. King Mesha of Moab was a sheep breeder. He used to pay the king of Israel 100,000 lambs, and the wool of 100,000 rams used to pay the king of Israel tribute. In other words, so the king of Israel would have to protect them. The king of Israel wouldn't attack him during a war. Stuff like that. So as long as he pays the money, he's safe. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So King Joram marched out from Samaria at that time and mobilized all Israel. Then he sent a message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah. I'm guessing when he rebels, then the king of Israel is either A, saying, I'm going to go take back Moab and put them under tribute, or B, the king of Israel is afraid that Moab's going to attack them. I don't know. Then King Joram sent a message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah. The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to fight against Moab? Jehoshaphat said, I will go. I am as you are. My people are as your people. My horses as your horses. Okay, that's what he said to Ahab. Then Ahab got beat. Let's hope this goes better. Joram asked, which route should we take? Jehoshaphat replied, the route of the wilderness of Edom. Is that Joram? Is that Jehoshaphat? We'll see. Maybe we'll see. So the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom set out. That's okay. So they got the king of Edom with them. Remember, it said that there wasn't a king, but a governor. Maybe by this time there's a king. I don't know. Anyway, after they had traveled their indirect route for 7 days, they had no water for the army or the animals with them. The king of Israel said, oh no, the Lord has summoned these three kings only to hand them over to Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, isn't there a prophet of the Lord here? Let's inquire of the Lord through him. One of the servants of the king of Israel answered, Elisha, son of Shaphat, who used to pour water on Elijah's hands, is here. Pour water on Elijah's hands. He used to serve Elijah. He's Elijah's protege. Okay. Jehoshaphat affirmed, the word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went to Elisha. However, Elisha said to the king Joram of Israel, what do we have in common? Go to the prophets of your father and your mother. But the king of Israel replied, no, because it is the Lord who has summoned these three kings to hand them over to Moab. Elisha responded, by the life of the Lord's armies, before whom I stand, if I did not have respect for King Jehoshaphat of Judah, I wouldn't look at you. I would take no notice of you. Now, but, okay, over here, it needs to be but, okay. I wouldn't take notice of you, but hey, Jehoshaphat, I like him. So bring me a musician. What? Oh, okay. While the musician played, the Lord's hand came upon Elisha. Okay. So music, I don't know. Then Elisha said, this is what the Lord says, dig ditch after ditch in this wadi. Oops, sorry guys. For the Lord says, you will not see wind or rain, but the wadi will be filled with water, and you will drink, you and your cattle and your animals. Okay. A wadi is a small stream. This is easy in the Lord's sight. He will also hand Moab over to you. So we're continuing. Then you will attack every fortified city and every choice city. You will cut down every good tree and stop up every spring. You will ruin every good piece of land with stones. I believe they would throw stones into the land so that you couldn't farm the land. Of course, if you beat the country, why not just take their land and use it for farming? I mean, everything was farming back then. Okay, anyway. About the time for the, okay, close quote. So Elisha is done talking. About the time for the grain offering the next morning, water suddenly came from the direction of Edom and filled the land. Huh. All Moab had heard that the kings had come up to fight against them. So all who could bear arms, from the youngest to the oldest, were summoned and took their stand at the border. When all those people from Moab got up early in the morning, the sun was shining on the water that had come down. What's it say? Water suddenly came from the direction of Edom. Okay. When Moab got up early in the morning, the sun was shining on the water, and the Moabites saw that the water across from them was red like blood. I guess the reflection of the sun made it look like blood. This is blood, they exclaimed. The kings have crossed swords, and their men have killed one another. So to the spoil, Moab, they think that Israel and Judah and Edom were like started fighting with each other and kill each other because look at all the blood. However, when the Moabites came to Israel's camp, the Israelites attacked them and they fled from them. So Israel went into the land attacking the Moabites. They would destroy the cities. They would. So they destroyed the cities. Okay. They would destroy the cities, and each of them would throw a stone to cover every good portion of land. They would stop up every spring and cut down every good tree. This went on until only the buildings of Kir Hareseth were left. The men with the slings surrounded the city and attacked it. Kir Hareseth. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was too fierce for him, he took 700 swordsmen with him to try to break through the king of Edom, but they could not do it. Now, this right here is a weird story. So, the king of Moab took his firstborn son, who was to become king in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering on the city wall. Pagan's gonna pagan. This is the strange part. Great wrath was on the Israelites, and they withdrew from him and returned to their land. Okay. So he took his firstborn, who was succeeded, and offered him as a burnt offering upon the wall. The wrath against Israel was so great that they gave up their siege and returned to their own land. Let's see. Probably the wrath of Chemosh, the Moabite god, who the child was offered. Can a fake god send wrath? Well, if a fake god is really, say, a demon, if a fake god is really a bad spirit, I guess so. That fake god could go and create havoc for Israel. It's a strange story. I agree. All right. On to other news. Okay. Oh, I guess this is like after that battle and after all that's done. Here we go. One of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, has died. You know that the Lord feared your servant feared the Lord. Now the creditor is coming to take my two children as his slaves." Okay. A husband dies, can't now the wife and the children have no way to pay rent. The creditor says, "Okay, if you ain't got no money or no food to give me, I'll take your children." No good. Elisha asked her, "What can I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in this house?" She said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." Oh yeah, got no money. They often worked hand to mouth. They would work for a day, get just enough money and or food for that day to live. Then they'd work the next day, get just enough money the next day. When the husband dies, well, wife can't work, children can't work. That's just the way it was back then. All they got is a jar of oil. Today, hey, wife, go out and get a job. It wasn't that way back then. She's screwed. But Elisha said, "Go out and borrow empty containers from all your neighbors. Do not get just a few. Then go in and shut the door behind you and your sons and pour oil into all these containers. Set the full ones to one side." So she left after she had shut the door, and I guess after she collected all the oil. Her sons, they kept bringing her containers and she kept pouring. Okay, so her sons kept bringing them. When they were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another container." But the son replied, "There aren't any more." Then the oil stopped. Then she went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt. You and your sons can live on the rest." Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. That must have been a lot of oil. One day, oil for cooking, obviously. They didn't have cars. One day, Elisha went to Shunem. A prominent woman who lived there persuaded him to eat some food. So whenever he passed by, he stopped there to eat. Then she said to her husband, I know that the one who often passes by here is a holy man of God. So let's make a small walled-in upper room and put a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp there for him. Whenever he comes, he can stay here. So I guess Elisha was going, to this place, to that place, another place, and he would often go through Schumann. So they built a little place for him there. One day he came there and stopped at the upstairs room to lie down. He ordered his attendant Gehazi call this Shunammite woman. So he called her and she stood before him. Then he said to Gehazi, say to her, look, you've gone to all this trouble for us. What can we do for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? What can we do for you? Okay. Can I speak to the king or the army for you? She answered, I am living among my own people. So he asked, then what should be done for her? Okay, we'll get to that next time. We'll see what can be done for her. Okay, remember, you got any questions about any of these verses, about any of these stories? Scroll down, got verse by verse teaching through every book of the Bible. Just copy and paste, put it in your search bar, and find the chapter and verse, and you got good long teaching. Until then, we'll see you on the next Very Basic Bible.